waiting for that. Oh. Which one's going to play national anthem? And which is so steaming? Yeah. They'll do national anthem. Okay.
Okay, we are now ready. So please join me for the national anthem. I hope. And if you'd remain standing for a moment of quiet contemplation. Okay, thank you, Council. I'll start with roll call from our clerk.
Can you hear me, sir? Yes. Your worship and members, all members are present with the exception of Councillor Cabral, who is absent. Councillor Hamlin is absent, and alternate Councillor Jeffrey is in attendance, and Councillor Michael Smith is absent.
Thank you. Does anybody have
Councillor Michael Smith is here.
Oh, Councillor Dolan, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to say that Councillor Smith is in attendance.
I just saw his face pop up. Thank you. Anybody have to leave early today? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, then we've done the roll call agenda. So I'll call upon Councillor Dolan, if you could read the resolution.
Michael Smith was had his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Councillor Smith.
I have a funeral to attend at 11, so I have to leave. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Dolan, then if you could read the resolution for our agenda.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Smith that the agenda for August the 8th, 2023 meeting of council be approved.
Everybody's heard the motion. All in favor? That is carried. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Worship. I do on the committee of the whole portion have a conflict, and I'm just trying to find the number, but it is in regards with the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Committee. I am the chair of that committee, and I receive remuneration for that from the province, and that's item 25.1.
Thank you, and I believe I've got Councillor Measures ready to go. Any other disclosures? Not seeing any. So presentations and delegations, we have none. The consent agenda, call around Councillor Burkett.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship. Through you, moved by myself, second by Councillor Norcross, that the Council Communications and Proclamations, June the 27th, 2023 to August the 7th, 2023, have been given due consideration, be received.
Thank you. Everybody's heard the motion. Any comments or questions on that? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. The adoption of council minutes, Deputy Warden.
Good morning, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Anderson, that the following council minutes be confirmed and adopted, and the Committee of the Whole reports be confirmed. The Joint County Council and Committee of the Whole minutes from June 27th, 2023. The Confidential Joint County Council and Committee of the Whole minutes from June 27th, 2023. And the Strategic Planning Session Special Council Confidential Report of June 27th, 2023.
Everybody's heard the minutes. Any questions or comments? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Special reports, we have none. Officers' reports, we have none. Notices of which notice has been previously given, we have none. Notices of motion, I don't believe we have any today, John. So now I'd look for a motion that we move into Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Fryer, second by Councillor Locks. Boy, I can hardly read the letters or see the faces from here. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And I just look for the role of my city reps. If you've got that, Mr. Clerk.
So, Your Worship, I currently have Aurelia Councillor Durnford, Aurelia Councillor Fallis. I have Barry Councillor Hamilton currently absent. Aurelia Mayor Geizik in attendance. Barry Councillor Nagusi absent. Barry Mayor Nuttall will join later in session. Barry Councillor Riepma is in attendance.
Okay, thank you. And I'll look for approval of the agenda from Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Cox, that the agenda for the August 8th, 2023 meeting of Committee of the Whole be approved.
Okay. The only thing I'll point out, the city reps, you can turn your cameras on if you haven't already. Okay, and on that motion, questions or comments? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council on the Committee of the Whole, which you've already declared, I believe, Councillor Dolan. Any others? I'm not seeing any. Please shout out if I miss you on the screen. Folks are so tiny when you're not in person. So we'll look for presentations and delegations, and we do have one. We've got Kate Burns Gallagher here from the Western Wardens Caucus. As many of you know, we're part of the Western Wardens. There's 15 upper the Western Wardens, and you're familiar, of course, with some of the projects, the SWIFT projects that went on last year, as long as they're a robust economic development department as well. But I'm sure Kate will give you an update on that. The current chair is Glenn McNeil, who he is the warden of Huron County and a fellow farmer. So I don't know if Glenn's with us here today, but I'll turn it over to you, Kate, whenever you're ready.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Warden Clark. Much appreciated. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today, and thank you for your time. I look forward to giving you a little bit of an update for those of you who have been around the council table about what the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus has been up to. And for those of you who are new, this is just an introduction to who we are and what we do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you can let me know how that goes here. Here we go. Let's try here. There we go. There, hopefully that looks okay for everybody.
We are good.
Great. So as the warden mentioned, we are the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, and we are the 15 upper tier counties in Western Ontario, and you can see the map there. Right now, I say 16 because Haldeman is trying us on for size this year. So they are just to the east of Norfolk County along Lake Erie there. And we're hopeful that in budget discussions later this year that they will too join on and complete our 16 county Western Ontario rural caucus. So we represent 300 communities in the region, more than 1.5 million residents, over 500,000 square kilometers. And really the glue that binds this massive region together is that we are 90% rural. That is the piece that really drives all of our work, is the rural piece of who we are. And a fun fact is if you take our region and you just turn us clockwise there, you can see that we are a great, big, strong and mighty elephant. Essex is the top of the trunk there. And if you see where Owenstown is located, we send our regrets. The purpose of the Western Ontario Warren's Caucus is really to speak with that one voice. We are that big elephant in Ontario. And when we work together and speak with that one voice, we really represent the rural voice of Western Ontario. And there's a real opportunity for us to be that conduit from the rural municipal governments to both the provincial and federal governments. So we look at those issues that affect all 15 member counties and how we can advocate with that one voice to both the provincial and federal governments. And how do we do that? We do that through a great network of elected officials and staff. So we have the caucus, and you are incredibly well represented by Warden Clark, and he sits also on our economic development team. And then we have our CAOs, and your CAO, Mark Aiken, has been an integral part of the WOWC, having served as our secretary multiple times over the past few years when you've had a chair, a warden chair with both Warden Cornell and several years ago as well, another chair whose name is escaping me, but it'll come to me, I'm sure. And then we have a small but mighty staff team with myself as a full-time executive director. We have a part-time manager of government relations and a contract administrative coordinator. From there, as I mentioned, Warren Clark sits on our economic development committee, which is comprised of elected officials, staff, and ministry liaisons, and they really drive the economic development work for the region. And then just newly added in this past year are our subject matter expert groups. Really coming off of the success of our economic development work, we've added these subject matter expert groups to complement the advocacy work that we are doing. So we have a representative from each of our 15 counties, and the subject matter team member from each of those counties sits on these groups. So from planning at Simcoe, we have Nathan, who has been an invaluable asset to our planning team. We have social services with Andrew, who likewise, he is a dynamo and has been at the table and helping us along the way as we navigate social services and homelessness. And then we have our communications team, and we've had a few different representatives from Simcoe on the communications team, and economic development with Nancy Heather, once again, amazing representative who's been part of the development of our economic development team too. So fantastic representation. We can't thank you enough for the great team members we get from Simcoe. So looking at the advocacy work, so those staff member teams feed information up to our CAOs and our WOWC staff, and that helps develop the advocacy work that we do. And that advocacy work is meeting with ministers and senior government officials, so our ADMs and DMs. It's working with other local and regional municipalities. We work with the Eastern Ontario Warren's Caucus. We work with the Ontario Big City Mayors as well. We work with FCM and AMO. And then a great example of the work that we do is when we were releasing our strategic priorities, instead of going to the media first, back in April, we brought all of our members of parliament and members of provincial parliament together. And we released our advocacy items and our strategic priorities to that group of individuals first. So our partners at both the federal and provincial levels, because those are our biggest advocates, both at Queen's Park and on the Hill. And if we can get our cohorts at both Queen's Park and on the Hill, knowing our strategic priorities and making those priorities part of their everyday speak, then we'll have so much more success. So we're really keen on making sure that our MPs and MPPs are part of the conversation. And that's a huge part of our advocacy work. And then we also do the usual letter writing campaigns and pre-budget submissions and all of that great work that you can see on our website. So diving into those priorities and what we're working on and what we will be going to AMO with in the next 2 weeks to talk to the provincial ministers about. I'm sure no surprise to anyone around the virtual table is housing and housing affordability. So we are going to the province to ask very specifically about their promise to making municipalities whole and keeping municipalities whole. Last November, when they clawed back the ability for municipalities to charge development charges, we want to know what their definition of keeping municipalities whole means. We know that infrastructure and affordable housing that is built through our municipalities is a huge asset to our communities and to the affordable and attainable housing landscape. So we need to make sure that those dollars are there. So we're going to be keeping the feet to the fire of the province on that promise. And secondly, with the Building Homes Faster Act, a large number of those 29 fastest growing municipalities were identified with their target numbers. We've just recently had that second wave of municipalities who have been identified that included Chatham-Kent and Norfolk and some cities within Simcoe as well for those housing targets. And so we want to make sure that all of our communities are included on those housing targets. Now, the interesting part with that second group is that the province is asking us to give those numbers instead of telling us the numbers. So we're going to be having a conversation at AMO about that and expectations there. Our second priority is workforce. You can't have housing without a workforce, and you can't have a workforce without somewhere to house them. So we've done a lot of great work with this. And as a result of our Economic Development Committee, we have a workforce strategy that really looks at both the workforce and the housing pieces of the region. And we know the fastest growing careers and occupations in the region at any given moment, because we have this great tool on our website that scrapes all of the job postings within the region. And so we can tell at any time what are the jobs that are not going filled and how fast some positions are being filled. And so we are actively working with the Ministry of Labour Training Skills Development to make sure that the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program is tailored to the needs of Western Ontario. So it's making sure that the occupations that qualify under that program to bring folks from across the world in are jobs that we need in Western Ontario. So that's anywhere from transit drivers to cleaners to retail. Retail we're seeing as being a huge gap right now, as people here in Ontario and specifically in Western Ontario moving in more and more into the skilled trades, which is fantastic. We're seeing a gap in those unskilled trades that need to be filled. And our third and final strategic priority for this year is mental health, addictions, and homelessness. And this is a new priority for us with the Western Ontario Warrens Caucus. And this is where Andrew has been invaluable with his expertise and knowledge in helping us really frame the asks that we're going for. And the first is that we are approaching the government for the mobile crisis response teams. So that's where a social service worker is partnered with an OPP or police officer. And there's lots of great funding out there coming from the province, but it's not a permanent dedicated funding stream. So come March 31st every year, many of the police forces don't know if they're going to be able to carry on the program on April 1st. So we're requesting that this program be permanently funded, especially because it has such great numbers and results in our rural communities. And secondly, we are asking for a permanent funding stream as well for rural communities for the homelessness prevention program. Where rural homelessness looks very different than urban homelessness. It's couch surfing, it's living out of your car. So we want to make sure that there's a rural dedicated stream. We're not taking away from urban, but we want to make sure that there is a rural dedicated stream when it comes to homelessness prevention program funding. And all that's to say that there's other programs that we continue to support, but that aren't necessarily what we're taking to AMO right now. And SWIFT is one of those projects. We continue to support day in, day out, and understand the need for that connectivity within Western Ontario. And if you can believe it, all of the SWIFT projects that were initially funded will be completed and in the ground this fall. We're very excited for that. And there's a few things in the works, so we're excited to see where SWIFT will go this fall, and working with Barry and his team. And on the economic development front, our economic development committee is actively looking at strategic planning. Just this past June, we looked at the workforce plan and looking at ways that we can really engage our partners across the economic development landscape in how we can further workforce development and economic development as our region continues to grow. And we couldn't do this without an incredible team of partners. We don't work in silos, that's for sure, certain. And Community Futures Western Ontario is a critical investor in our economic development work. We also partner strongly with Workforce Planning West. Then we also, as I mentioned earlier, have Ontario Big City Mayors and Eastern Ontario Warrens Caucus, AMO and FCM. And then on project-specific things, we've been working with Trillium Network, Golden Horseshoe Farming Alliance, as well as Rural Ontario Institute. If you're looking for a little bit more information or to stay up to date on what the Western Ontario Warrens Caucus is doing, we have our website, which is wowc.ca. We have our newsletters and press releases. We are still on Twitter, and we also have Facebook. Just a quick example of benefits of being at that table, at the Western Ontario Warrens Caucus table. It's really that, as I mentioned, I see at the regional table representing our rural communities. It's that rural voice at the provincial and federal tables, that advocacy, and there's that support network as well through the subject matter expert teams. Not only are we able to get the information to develop our advocacy, but there's that good old R&D for all the staff members that Rob and Duplicate. They're able to share those great projects that are happening and tweak it for their own municipalities. And there's the collective regional projects that we're seeing great success, such as our Connect On tool, which is a mapping of all the manufacturing and agricultural assets. And right now we're working on the rural housing information system. So bringing together all of the housing information regionally into one system, which we're really excited about. So that's just a really quick overview of what we are working on. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Warden Clark, for being such an invaluable resource and a great advocate on our team.
Okay, thank you, Kate. And as Glenn always points out, we are much stronger together. So we've had many presentations that we sit as a group with the ministers, and I think they listen to us. In fact, I believe they do. I will share this council's concern as well that the SWIFT is no longer being funded. I also sit on the SWIFT board, and the province has decided to go a new direction on that, which is disappointing for many of us because we had very ambitious goals with the SWIFT. So that is coming to an end. Any questions from the floor? Yes, Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation, Kate. I'm just a little geographically challenged. So there's on your map, there's that kind of hole between Wellington, Perth, Oxford, and Brant. Is that where Haldeman is?
Thank you. Through you, Warren, to Councillor Dolan. So that hole there between Wellington and Perth, that's the Waterloo region. Okay. Yeah, Haldeman is just south, right next door, east of Norfolk, along Lake Erie there. So they're not colored, and they're also a gray area. As of right now, hopefully shortly, we'll be able to color them in.
Okay, thank you. And I guess there's advocacy to Waterloo as well.
Yes, yeah, because they are too very rural.
Yeah. And then my final question, if I might, Warden Clark, was in your partners, you've so the Ontario Small Urban Municipalities is it could be another outlet. Now I know you've got Warden McDonald, who is the chair of the OSAM group, on your board. So you've got a good connection there, but I wondered if you have anybody on your board that also sits on Roma.
Right Through you, Warden, sorry, to
Yes.
Councillor Dolan. Right now for Roma, we do not have a direct link. However, Chatham-Kent's representative, Councillor Jamie, what is her last name? McGarville, I want to say. I apologize if that's not her last. McGrail, thank you. She sits on Roma, and we do have a great connection with Councillor McGrail. She does communicate quite a bit with us. So.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions? I believe McGrail is on SWIFT as well.
Yes.
She's on one of the boards, yes. Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Through the chair. Kate, thank you very much for this presentation. I just wondered if your asks that you're taking to AMO, you could maybe let us know or let the warden know how you made out with those, sort of keep us updated on that. Because this is my first time I've seen a presentation, and I'm really excited about it and how we can all work together. And you're right about the larger group having the power with more groups with it. So anyway, thank you very much. And that would be just something I'd like to sort of keep going, this presentation and keeping the communication lines open.
I will endeavor to do a better job sharing the emails when they come back to me. All right. And I've got Councillor, oh boy, Conton.
Thank you, Warden. I'd like to ask a question to Ms. Burns about the housing aspect, because there's two items here. Well, I was looking at the map, but there's been talk about the green belt and replacement of land. I'm not quite sure whether that has an impact for the area for the Western Ontario, but also I guess statistically, if there's going to be housing, how does that impact on the rural areas, or is that mostly municipalities that you're looking for housing within the jurisdiction? So again, you're losing property, but you're gaining in different areas. So I don't know what the aspect of how much property would be calculated in the new housing.
Go ahead, Kate.
Thank you. Through you, Warden, to Councillor Cotton. A lot of our work, so specifically through the workforce strategy that focused on housing, really looks at infill, so utilizing sites within our existing hamlets and smaller villages and smaller communities. So infill, also looking at existing residential. So if you have main floor commercial, looking at the residential up above, and looking at the existing plans of subdivision and approvals there. We know there's extensive number of existing plans of subdivision that are approved, but are not going through and not being acted upon. So we know there's a disconnect between the number of approved plans of subdivision and those that are being started. So, and if those approved and those, we could really make up a lot of ground if those that have been approved were actually starting to be built. So I think there's a lot of inventory available with simply looking at the plans of subdivision that have been approved and haven't been started. So we as a rural caucus very much appreciate that we need to protect our farmland, and that was something we really advocated on and worked very strongly with on the last round of changes to the provincial policy statement. We were so pleased to see that that was reversed as well. So I hope that answers your question. If not, please let me know if there's anything else you needed there.
Just a follow-up, Board. Yeah, no, it's understandable that there's been identified areas. The other aspect was I'm not quite sure whether you're in the green belt area. And the question was originally was how is that land going to be replaced if there's going to be taken from the green belt? So I'm not going to cover that if that covers your territory.
Yeah, I'm not through you, Warden. I'm not entirely sure where they're looking, and that's hopefully something we'll be able to have some discussions in the next couple of weeks, particularly at AMO and also with the ministry folks, where they're going to make up that land. So those are some discussions that will need to be had for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other questions? I am not seeing any at this time. So thank you, Kate. Thanks for taking the time to come out and educate everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I will get back to our agenda, and we're on to performance management with Councillor Cox. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. Item 18.1, Simcoe County Archives renovation project. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Evans that item CCW 2023-181 dated August the 8th, 2023 regarding Simcoe County Archives renovation project be received. And
Judith, sorry, you can't move them.
I don't read them. That's right.
No, you know, you're chairing now, so you can't
Yeah.
move the motion. You'll need to get a mover and a seconder because you're chairing.
I said was moved by Councillor Evans and myself, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't chair, I can't move, yep, you're right, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm on another project here. Okay, I need, so if I can have Councillor Evans move and Councillor Dolan. Thank you. That item CCW 2023-181 dated August 8th, 2023 regarding Simcoe County Archives renovation project be received, and that the financial strategy for the multi-phase renovation project as generally outlined in the subject item be endorsed. Sorry, my first Zoom meeting.
No problem.
I can't see if anyone has any questions, sorry.
I'm not seeing any here, Judith.
Okay, if it's that, so all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to human services with Chairman Leduc.
Thank you, Warden, and good morning, everyone. We're at item 19, the human services consent. With one item in the consent for it's a letter dated June 29, 2023 from Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit regarding the 2022 annual report and the strategic plan for 23 and 24. Question concerns with this? Do we have any questions? At this point in time, I don't see any, right? So can I get a mover and a seconder for this, please? Moved by Councillor Sandu, seconded by Councillor Fowler. So the recommendation is that the following consent item having been given due consideration be received. All in favor? Great, thank you. I apologize, I forgot to welcome the city reps here. So welcome to Human Services. We are at Human Services Social Housing. We have 20.1. It is CCW 2023-194. Simcoe County Housing Corporation Development, 20 Rose Street, additional units options, presented by Brad. So he's going to give us a, Brad, I'm going to turn this over to you because you're going to give us a presentation, please. Here. Brad here.
Brad, it's Deputy Clerk speaking. We can't hear you. So you might just want to take a moment to try your audio. Brad, it's Jonathan McGill, the Deputy Clerk. We're still having trouble hearing you. There's no audio coming through at this time.
Do we want to move on to the Simcoe County Housing Corporation Board meeting and then come back to this item after?
Yes, that's a good suggestion, Chairman. So carry on, Councillor Leduc, and then we'll come back.
Okay, thank you. So we will move into item 21, Human Services Simcoe County Housing Corporation Board meeting. So members are Councillor Corbell, Councillor LaRose, myself, Councillor McDonald, Councillor Miskinen, Councillor Rawson, Councillor Sandu, Councillor Smith, and Councillor Michael Smith. And Very Mayor Alex Nuttall, Deputy Mayor Robert Thomas, and Jay Follis from Aurelia Council. So those are the members that will vote on these items. So I move to second for this, please. Moved by Councillor Sandu and seconded by Councillor Rawson, that the committee of whole recess at 9:37 to convene the meeting of Simcoe County Housing Corporation Board. All in favor from the members? You? Yes, and the warden sits there as ex officio. We are into Simcoe County Housing, so I'll call the meeting to order at 9:37. Approval of agenda. I need a mover and a seconder to move the approval of the agenda. Move by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Follis. That the agenda dated for August 8th, 2023 meeting of Simcoe County Housing Corporation Board be approved. All in favor? The members? Thank you. I see the majority of them. Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. If you have any, you can declare now or when the item comes up. And if you have any issues, please just reach out, jump on the and actually put your mic on, and it'll be easier for me to address any of these issues. So, seeing no disclosure of pecuniary interest, the adoption of previous minutes. We have a mover and a seconder for that. So I'm looking for Councillor Smith and Councillor Smith, and then Councillor Miskinen. Okay, and the resolutions of the minutes of the Simcoe County Housing Corporation Board meeting dated June 6, 2023 be confirmed and adopted. Question concerns with this? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. We are now into item 5. It's matters for consideration. That item 5.1, HCB 2023-195, expanding housing options within Simcoe County Housing Corporation. May I get a mover and a second to put this on the floor? So I'm looking at, okay, Councillor, I think it's Coughlin. Are you able to? No, sorry. How about Barry Mayor Nuttall? Are you here? And I'll go with Deputy Mayor Robert Thompson. Are you here? I think they're both here, so I'll have to move a second for that. Questions or concerns with this item? It is item 5.1, the August 8th regarding expanding housing options. A question from Councillor Follis. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I believe I've got the report correct. It's HCB 2023-195. So I read through this twice, and I was trying to get my head around what it entails, and I'm just asking that staff explain a little bit more. I was curious, first off, is this removing RGI units from our current inventory to provide another form of unit? That was my primary concern. The other element was there's mention of the installation of a security system at a certain cost. I wonder if staff could speak to that. I might have some following comments afterward, depending on what the comments are. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So it's not in the meeting. Okay, so I need a seconder for this. So Councillor Follis, can you second this one for me?
Do you mind if I hold off? I want to see what the matter entails first.
Okay, so I will go to Councillor Rawson. Are you able to second this? Thank you. So it's on the floor now with mover and seconder. I will ask our general manager, Mina, to reply to the question from Councillor Follis. Are you here?
Just making sure you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Great. Thank you, Chair Leduc, and through you, Councillor Follis, to answer your question. First, what we're proposing here is two things. We're asking the board to allow us an opportunity to receive funding, HPP funding, from the service manager, Simcoe County Social and Community Services. This is $260,000 that we want to invest in the Barrie property as a part of our 10-point homelessness prevention strategy. And this was the part of the strategy where we're looking to start to invest in our current stock and convert it into supportive housing. So we've identified a community housing building in Barrie. And what we want to do is invest this $260,000 to enhance the capital in that building to make it more conducive for a supportive housing site. Things like enhancing security, putting in some virtual concierge or some sort of entry point virtual control system, as well as going keyless in those units, and then investing in some common space to convert it into clinical treatment space so we can negotiate a a supportive housing program with a mental health and addiction service provider. That being said, when we introduce these units into that portfolio, that's 100% rent geared to income. What we're doing also is introducing a new subsidy to apply to those units and allowing us as a service manager to free up those RGI units and put them in other locations. Here, we're starting to mix the different levels. And the reason why, and this goes towards your second question, is because some people have, through the RGI program, have achieved success, meaning they've been on the subsidy to the point as becoming more and more employed, that when you do their rent geared to income calculation, you find that now they're paying up to market rent. So this is freeing up those RGI units so that when we select someone off the wait list, that they can take the deeper subsidy, someone who has no income, and then applying a lesser subsidy through a different program for someone who's already paying market rent and just needs a slight subsidy to maintain their affordability. So this is just creating more flexibility in the housing corporation, but actually possibly even increasing our revenue, or at least maintaining it, but freeing up the RGI for someone who cannot afford it or isn't employed.
Foster, you good with that?
I have some follow-up questions. I do apologize taking the time, but it's just helpful in terms of getting my head around this. So at present, the plan would be to retrofit an existing building that the county has, and if I'm understanding this correctly, and remove some off RGI and allow some people to join on to RGI. Do I have that correct? I guess my question being, are there any RGI units lost?
Through you, Chair Leduc, thank you for the question, Council Files. No, there are no RGI units lost in this approach. It's diversifying the RGI units across our whole portfolio. As a system service manager, we're legislated at a certain service standard and we cannot dip under it. So this is what we're trying to do, is take units and identify people who are on RGI that could qualify for a different subsidy because of their level of income, and freeing up that RGI unit and applying it somewhere else in the community to allow someone off the wait list to access it that may need the deep subsidy rather than just a slight top up. And certainly this would be a voluntary approach, but the idea here is to maximize the use of the RGI for those who need it the most, and then apply or layer in subsidies with support services and care for those who need a different type of service, including a slight subsidy on their rent.
And just a follow-up question here on that. So the objective being that you try to find people that are on RGI, but in your kind of definition don't need to be there, I guess. What would qualify them for removing them from the RGI list, the RGI subsidy?
So through you, Chair Leduc, let me clarify, Council Files. No one is being removed from any list, and no one is being removed from their unit. All we're doing is we're applying a different subsidy program to that person's client file if they so choose. So if someone is doing well and they've showed 15 years of steady employment, and every year we calculate their rent, they pay the exact amount in subsidy, they're holding an RGI unit that someone who's been waiting 15 years for that unit cannot access. So the idea here is to free up that RGI unit by providing them or offering them a different subsidy that still allows them to pay the same level of rent, still allows them to live in the same unit and community, but this would be a voluntary move off of it so that someone else could access it on the wait list, and we would apply that RGI to a different unit in a different community that's vacant, that has a vacant unit in it.
Okay, thanks, Mina.
Excellent. Thank you, Mina, for that. Appreciate the explanation. Further comments or questions on this issue? So we're just shuffling monies around a little bit. So it is, recommendation is that item HCB 2023-195 dated August 8, 2023 regarding expanding housing options within Simcoe County Housing Corporation be received, and that any proposed funding allocations offered which assist in expanding housing options within Simcoe County Housing Corporation housing portfolio through provincial and federal funding and or through community opportunities be approved and received, and that the signing officer for the Simcoe County Housing Corporation enter into agreements as required to accept such funding. So I have a mover and a second for that. All in favor from the Housing Corporation.
In favor.
I think I have everybody there. Thank you. Oh, Mayor Nuttall, you had a question or? Were you
Just
approving it?
voting, Mr. Chair, just voting.
Thank you. Okay, I'll accept the hand as a vote. Other matters for consideration. We're at 6. Is there any other matters for consideration in the Simcoe Housing Corporation agenda? I don't see anybody, so.
Mr. Chair, is this where I could ask a question at large, or would it be a different would this be a good opportunity to ask a question at large about strategy for housing?
I think you can ask that question if you'd like. Yes, please do.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And through yourself to our public service at the county. I had a question come in last week, and it's with regards to some of the strategy going forward. I know some of it we've just been talking about, but one of the questions I didn't know the answer to, but was wondering if there is anything in this front in terms of a lens of economic development associated with investment in our housing. And the specific request was from a developer who's putting forward a proposal where they've got seven organizations that are each taking 10% of their development, and the developer's taking 30% of the development. And the result is that the actual building will get built mostly by not-for-profits. Has there been any discussion to kind of stimulate the economy in us doing the same thing with our dollars?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Mayor Nuttall. The answer is yes. We have 2 strategies coming forward in the fall. We have our 10-year affordable homelessness and housing strategy that looks holistically at ways to create more affordability, including introducing approaches and partnerships that haven't been explored in the last 10 years. And then secondly, we are, as Simcoe Housing Corporation is going forward with its master plan for redevelopment, where here again, our value proposition is the land that we currently own, and how do we intensify and partner with other service providers to create unique mixed income communities on the lands that we own. And then finally, as the system service manager, so outside of the Housing Corporation and more at Simcoe County's Community Social Services Division, as the service manager for affordable housing across Simcoe County and for the 2 separated cities, we would be looking at our nonprofit community housing providers. So there's an additional 2,000 or so units on that side of the portfolio that also has its own lands. These are nonprofits and charitable organizations that have historically owned and operated affordable housing for the service manager. And we look there, and similarly, as we've developed a master plan here, we probably include that in our affordable housing strategy to show different ways we can maximize opportunities and partnerships that often lead to private and public partnerships. And currently, actually right now, we do have a call for an expression of interest for all developers and nonprofit providers to put forward their bids for interesting or proposals of ways to maximize new affordable housing developments here at the county.
Thank you so much. Is there any way that you can send that? It was an RFI, or was it an RFEI or something like that that's out there?
Yes, we can send you the RFI right now, and it closes in the fall, I believe, of 2023. So in the next few months. So it's giving everyone an opportunity to put forward the best proposal. And this is different than the call of proposal that's going out to our member municipalities and 2 separated cities for their own bids. This is more about the nonprofit and the private developer sector of putting forward their proposals. So if for the one that you given an example form sounds like an interesting proposal, that would be someone I would encourage to submit their expression of interest.
And is there you just mentioned the municipalities. I know we're working on something right now with, I think, a great location, but is there any opportunity to dip into both at the same time? For example, if we were looking at doing a deal with a developer that would cede them a piece of property for the purpose of being able to build, varying degrees of housing. Could we also have them apply for the same site for funding as well?
Through the chair, yes, Mayor Nuttall, you're not precluded from either or. So if the bid qualifies under the criteria of the nonprofit and private call for expression of interest, or if it qualifies under the municipality's bid, you can submit them in both. When we send you the information, you'll see what the nice thing about the tool is for the current call that's open right now is it allows you to fill out kind of a table of criteria points, which basically indicates what we're looking for in terms of the best way to create affordable housing or to intensify affordable housing. So theoretically, that same criteria in that table would certainly apply to any municipal proposal that was put forward. And we're taking into consideration things like the Accelerator Fund and some of the other CMHC products that are available currently. So that way you're pre-qualifying for those products by developing or managing your bid or putting together your bid with that criteria that we're sharing in both calls.
Thanks so much.
Excellent conversation. Good opportunities there. So, okay, so we have any other comments on other matters for consideration? At this point, I don't see any. So we have no confidential matters for consideration. I can now do adjournment. It's 9:53. I'll ask Councillor Corbell and Councillor Brian Smith to adjourn the meeting. So the August 8th meeting of Simcoe County Housing Corporation Board be adjourned at 9:53.
Councillor Duke.
Yeah.
Chairman, we're missing Councillor Cabral, so I'll move that for you.
Sorry. Okay. Warden, thank you very much. All in favor of adjournment? Thank you. We've got everybody there. Thank you. I will go back now. I will ask if we have cleaned up the mic for Brad for his presentation back to 20.1. Is that available to us now, Deputy Clerk?
Oh, I just need a motion from you to reconvene.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Motion. Okay, where's that? Let me go back to that. Very sorry. Adjournment. Sorry.
I can do it here. I just need a
go ahead.
motion to reconvene back into the committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Measures, second by Councillor Smith. That is Mike Smith. All in favor? That is carried. Sorry about that, James. Carry on.
No, Warden, thank you very much. I missed that because I went backwards in my page instead of going forward. So good catch. We'll keep this organized. All right, we're back to 20.1. Are we able to hear Brad now with his presentation for 20.1, the Simcoe County Housing Corporation development at 20 Rose Street?
Good morning, Chair Leduc. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, sir. Thank you very much.
That's great. Sorry, and my apologies for that. So good morning, Your Worship and members of council. I will go back and share my screen. All right, Chair, is it up on the screen?
Yes.
All right, so good morning again, everybody. I just also wanted to mention, again, it's a little different in Zoom that you can't see some of the other staff that are present, but I do have construction supervisor Jason Allen, as well as Brad Horner, who's our manager for maintenance facilities and development. So they're also on the call, and should some questions need their assistance, we'll bring them on through camera as well. So just real quickly, what we're going to do is do a quick recap of the previous presentation that we did, as that was back in April. And again, lots of water under the bridge, I'm sure, has happened since then for you. We'll just review some of that feedback that we received that was very important at the time, and go over some financials and some questions. So the first report, if we want to consider that as our first option or the base case, this was the 176 unit building that was approved. It was a 9 and 11 story building, and we had both ground floor as well as second floor commercial and a parking structure that we had a fair bit of discussion about. And so some of the key feedback that staff heard was council asked us to look at, could we intensify? Could we squeeze some more units in there? Certainly if we made some units smaller, thinking whether those be studios, 1 bedrooms, or looking at seniors. We had lots of discussion on the parking garage. Is there a way to, minimize its appearance? Can we get more units? Is there anything we can do with that? And we also looked at the affordability mix in the units. So option 1 that was put into the report for you is, like I said, the base case, though 176, so 9 and 11 stories. Again, all of the options we're showing are mixed income. The mixed income model was very well supported in our previous review. And like I said, the agency space is on the ground as well as the second floor. And what you're seeing in that image is a very standard parking garage. So it's 3 levels with 1 below grade. And what we did at option 2, so again, it's still the same 9 and 11 stories. So the outside of the building hasn't changed at all, but we've gone into the top 2 floors of each tower and looked at some of the larger units and broken them into studios and 1 bedrooms. And that allowed us to put in an additional 12 units. And then there's a small change in staffing as the numbers get bigger, and you'll see that as we go through, as we hit certain milestones in number of units. And the parking garage in this case is exactly the same again. So 3 levels with 1 below grade. So option 3 is the significant change. So again, it's still the 9 and 11 story towers, but we've been able to get up to 215 units. So a significant bump in units. But the big change here is the second floor, what was commercial, has been completely removed, and an additional floor has been added over onto the parking garage. So if you look over at the parking garage now, you're actually seeing 3 levels of parking plus an office level, and then there's just a small little chunk that's been added onto the roof just to make the square footage work. So a fairly significant change. And then what's had to happen as well is because the parking garage has gotten taller, we've actually had to sink the parking garage a little bit lower into the ground to make the heights work for the existing residential units that are now in that second floor. And then there's a small change in staffing again. And then the other important thing here is with both options 3 and 4, we've taken a number of services now and outside of the main building and put them into the parking garage. So there is an increase in site costs and capital costs that happen. So if we look at it in simple terms, now we have, washrooms that are in the parking garage that may not have been there before. We have to get water into the parking garage, wastewater out. We have to add elevators, and there's a number of other factors that will increase or contribute to the cost by not keeping everything under one roof. And then lastly, we have option 4. And again, it's a little hard to see if I try not to make anybody seasick, but if we flip back and forth with option 3 and 4, you'll notice there is the increase in the height of the tower. So it's now an 11 and 13 stories. So this is quite a large development. However, it does get us up to the 271 units, still keeping that level of intensification on the upper floors. And again, you'll notice the parking garage is the same. So we've kept that commercial over there. We've had to sink it down. However, the one thing that does happen at this larger one is we're getting, again, very close to the point where we might need an extra level of parking. And again, it all depends on how tight we try to go. And it also is influenced a little bit by some of the future partners that may be in there and what some of their parking requirements are. And some of those things won't be known yet. So there is a slight risk of having to add an extra level of underground parking. So jumping over to the cost. So just a couple of points to note. So again, this is a Class C and this is showing inflation. So these aren't today's dollars. What we actually have to do is predict what this building is going to cost 3 years from now. So there is inflation cooked into the numbers basically for the next 3 years. And it's at 10%, 8%, and 8%. So what we think is reasonable. Certainly there always is a little bit of risk in trying to project what some of those costs are going to be looking out into the future. But you can see running across in terms of the capital side, the provincial funding is being allocated evenly across. The proceeds of disposition, so that's the sale of the existing houses that are in Barrie, and we continue to sell those as they come up. The numbers that we're showing, could be a little bit on the conservative side. We are seeing certainly as the houses get sold, in some cases we do get a little bit more for them, but of course with the increase in house value, it's also the increase in other costs that sometimes that one offsets the other. The cities of Barrie and Aurelia shares, and of course the county portion. just kind of looking down at the bottom part of that table, you can actually see we do try to give a pretty good breakdown of what all those costs are going to be. So just remembering again, in these total costs is the purchase of the land, as well as the demolition of the old OPP structure that was there, staffing costs, and of course the parking garage that we've discussed at length, and also the sound wall. So we currently leave the sound wall in. If once things are approved and we start working a little bit more in detail with the City of Barrie and the Ministry of Transportation, we'll actually see, do we need the wall? Who's going to pay for it? Is it cost shared? And where does it need to go? And things like that. So right now, this assumes that we're on the hook for that sound wall. But again, once we get into those negotiations with the MTO, we'll obviously be making every effort to have the Ministry of Transportation pay their share, if not all of it, if at all possible. Coming to the operating sides. So the first part of the table is always the good news. That's the money that you're bringing in, and which is a combination of the residential rent, the commercial rent, and the parking revenue. But again, important to note, a lot of the parking revenue is used to go into an account to offset the future capital that a parking structure is going to need. Again, parking structures are not only expensive to build, but they are expensive to maintain, and especially long-term, they can cost a lot of money to repair if you're not collecting and saving that money appropriately for that future capital allowance. And then on the expensive side, again, you'll notice the salaries are in there. From a trend standpoint, you will notice both option 3 and option 4 do have a higher administration number. So in terms of their salaries and insurance, but also the maintenance line, and as well as the future capital. So larger buildings, a lot more parts, a lot more infrastructure that will take more to pay for in the long term. So just looking at it at a very high level, we know as staff, we can support really all the options. Certainly options 1 to 3 are the most viable and certainly generate the best net benefit, if you want to think of it that way, when you subtract your revenue from your expenses. Option 2 is the greatest number of units in terms of that overall net benefit. However, option 3, which is the one staff is recommending, certainly we think strikes the balance between a reasonable net benefit, a fair capital cost, an appropriate amount of units that we're putting into a neighborhood. That's one of the other considerations that we're looking at, that option 4 is quite large. So not only is it large in terms of capital cost, however, it's large in neighborhood fit. And that's just something to keep in mind when it comes to NIMBYism and making sure that we do want our buildings to blend in the community. The other important note about option 3 is our current Ontario Works office, which is down at 136 Bayfield Street. That building is, we think, being redeveloped, and certainly our lease is ending. And so at some point we have to get our offices removed from there and over to the new location. And there is a bit of a timing issue. So by option 3, by having the Ontario Works office on top of the parking garage, we could actually work on constructing the parking garage in the Ontario office first and try to get the existing office moved from the 136 Bayfield office into the new site, and then complete the main residential building secondary to help with that timeline. Still going to be tight. We still may need an extension at 136 Bayfield, but it could be a lot less and be a little bit more practical way, because it is quite expensive to move the Barrie office temporarily to some location, for whether it be a number of weeks or months to make it all work. So I think that is at a high level. And then at this point, we can open up the floor to questions, and I can stop sharing if that helps.
All right. Thank you, Brad, for that presentation. Great information in there. I can remember we had a great debate on this topic a while ago. So I have a recommendation here, but I'm going to ask for questions first. If you have any kind of questions, we do have an option 3 on the table. So if there's a change to the options, I want to just save for a mover and a seconder for now. So we'll just go straight to questions. If anybody has any questions in regard to this presentation. Okay, Councillor Follis to start.
Thanks. Through the chair, I thought more would jump in. I'm sure some will, but just a couple comments for me. I'm certainly willing to move our second option 4 forward. I think Given the fact this is in Barrie, the fact that we're in desperate need of affordable housing units right now, and likely we won't have a project of this nature in a while, I think it's warranted to try to go a little bit bigger and to accommodate more. From looking at the numbers there, that could accommodate the equivalent of a whole other project. I think the reality is we look at the numbers right now with affordable housing requests in Simcoe County, and I think we could build 4 of these buildings and there'd still be a lineup out the door to access some of these units. So I think my preference is to go bigger on this particular project, and I hope others will support that as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Follis. Further comments or questions in regards to this? Brad, do you want to come back with any comment based on Councillor Follis's comments?
Yeah, sure. Through you, Chair. No, we absolutely, as staff, understand the need for the housing. Just a couple things to consider, and we'll always defer to what council's wishes are. There's a little bit more risk with the larger structure. So socially, there's some risk there to keep in mind. Financially, there's some risk to keep in mind. When it comes to the soils work, we would have only drilled, I think it was about 6 meters. So we have an idea of what's in that first 6 meters. Or probably we would need to do some deeper drilling to get the foundations that are going to be necessary for the larger, taller building. So there is some financial risk there to consider. And then also, I think just with looking at taxpayer money and the net benefit, you do see a bit of a decrease in the net benefit with option 4. And again, it's just because of the additional capital work and additional assets that you're going to be maintaining over the long term. So that was certainly the rationale when we tried to weigh all the factors out, but we certainly understand that, the desire to more units is there.
Yeah, and okay, GM, yes, Baguette.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. I would also add that there's a significant jump in increase of net units of affordability. There's also, this is the threshold between option 3 and 4 where we cross over an additional operating costs and staffing costs. And that's another reason why to Director Spiewak's comment that the net benefit starts to shrink. And then finally, when you get into those sizes, you kind of re-explore the history of affordable housing development that happened in the 70s. And there is like a lot of good standing examples of once you exceed the 250 unit mark and get into the 300 unit marks, not only from a social impact, but the operational costs over time do significantly change. And even though we're building to a much higher standard, there's still that risk of a lot of ongoing costs that are probably exceeding kind of some of the estimations we're making at this point.
And I will jump into Councillor Follis, and I kind of went down that thoughts myself, as you talked about with the option 4, but then looking through it all and understanding that, it's the social impact to me. That's I think the biggest concern I have. And I want to make sure that when we do this project, it's done right. It's a great project that we can look back and say, this is going to work. And if we get other opportunities throughout the county to do things like this, we can prove to the residents around the areas that we can build these kind of complexes without having any social stigma to it. So I think my perception is, I looked at it, I thought the same thing, but I just realized that I think it's a more of a social impact when it comes right down to going that large. We jump into a different building. So further comments or questions from anybody? I see, okay, Councillor Fryer. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm having some difficulty supporting option 3, so I'd have more difficulty with option 4. So I wanted to ask through you to the director, because I'm trying to get a sense of the financial impact for Simcoe County for these additional affordable housing solutions. And the reason I'm thinking of that is I'm trying to look at it and decide if maybe that investment could be used somewhere else and get a better overall benefit. So what I was keying on was table 7 on page 8. and the fact that the RGI units aren't changing in spite of the increase in units. And that stood out to me partly because the funded units are also not changing. So it shows that the government funding for the capital investment is $6 million and it doesn't change. Is there some chance that there's government funding that could come in through this that would give me a little bit better sense that because the way I look at it is in considering the fact that we're going from 176 units to 215, which is 39 units, but our return drops by $300,000 per year for 50 years. So I sit there and wonder, maybe there's some government funding that isn't built in because we're not sure of it. So I guess that's my question through you, Chair, to the director.
Okay, Brad?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Yeah, so the AMR, so I guess your first question was, could more government funding be coming in? The answer is yes. So we always are watching, and we do expect some announcements later in the fall, whether if there is going to be, I think, like an RHI 4, if that were to come along. Certainly this would be an option to put some additional funding in there. The other thing to remember is on the AMRs, they actually are still quite affordable. I think I did, looking at the numbers this morning, at 80 AMR, you're just about $1,000, like 1,064. So even at 100 AMR, it still is quite affordable to actually what if you want to see a true market unit is in the city of Barrie right now, which in that location in a newer building with some of those views, you'd be around the 2,000 mark. So certainly, even though these, if we want to call them market units, or we call them market, they're actually still quite a bit below market, and also trying to help address that middle need where, you know, we find a lot of times some people, you know, they need the RGR, they're much deeper subsidies. But when you start getting into a lot of sometimes I don't like always using the term, but the working poor, or sometimes the people that are actually working, but in a lot of the service industry or restaurants, commercial, those types of jobs, typically they can't afford the market either. So in a mixed income community, we're trying to then address all those levels of affordability.
Just a follow up then, if I may, Chair?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm struggling with is we're adding units and making the investment in affordable housing, and we're getting no help from the federal or provincial government in what we're doing here. And that makes me wonder again if that investment couldn't be made somewhere else in some other way that we would get the funding and get a bigger bang for our buck. So at this stage, I'm not going to support option 3 either. I do know that it'll come to the table in September and for formal approval. So I may change my my vote by then, but I've got to look at this a little bit more in depth. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fryer. I also now have Councillor Brian Smith, I think it is. And I have Councillor Norris.
If I may just interject briefly, it will be approved today when we rise and go back into county council. So it will be today.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. Councillor Fryer will be approved today. So I've got Councillor Brian Smith. Are you here,
Thank you,
Brian?
Mr. Chair, through you to the committee. So I'm glad to see that we've got a lot more units here. However, there's a cost to that clearly, and I do share some of the concerns of my friend Councillor Fryer in not only the costs moving forward, but what it is we're actually creating here, and the unknowns moving forward for those costs year over year. But my biggest concern at this point is still the parking, and I'm looking, you know, we were looking at about $18 million for parking. $18 million builds a lot of units in a different location for sure. But I did receive an email, Mr. Chair, which I will forward and share with staff from a corporation called the Kiwi Newton Group. And this is an organization that builds parking structures. It's what they do for a living. And the individual that's reached out to me is Jeremiah Vanderland, who I think is one of the principals there. And he himself has had a look at this and is quite concerned about the dollar value of $18 million for this structure, which is going to provide us with about 230 parking spaces, if I'm correct. He seems to think that his corporation could build this structure for somewhere in the $5.8 to $6 million range. That's quite the gap, Mr. Chair. And I'd really like to see, before we vote on this today, I'd like to see staff have a conversation with this organization and come back to us. If there's a $12 million savings to be had here, and I'm not just pulling these numbers from the air, as I say, I'll share this this email with staff. But this is significant. And when we're struggling with not only the economic times, but the unknowns we have going forward, and then the cost of parking alone for this development, which I shared before was quite concerning for me. I'd really like to see us not bring this to the table today for a vote and have staff go back and look at this even deeper. It's great to see more units. I could support, I guess, if push come to shove, item number 3. I think 4 is a big concern for me from a social impact possibly on this community. I'm not even so sure that 3 isn't really pushing that envelope, but we certainly need to get more units and better cost per square foot. But again, if we look at just the parking alone and $12 million, it's significant. So my apologies not sharing this before. Quite frankly, I received it. I had a look at it, and as we all know, times are busy, so I kind of gapped that. But I will get this over to staff today to have a look at, and I'd like to see this come back at another date. And I understand the pressures for our office space downtown, but it is what it is. We're not talking a couple of dollars here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith. So maybe I'll ask Director or the General Manager to comment a little bit on the parking structure costs.
I'll jump in first.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. And for Councillor Smith, yeah, we actually are well aware of Kiwi Newton. I actually have spoken with Jeremiah on the phone. So just for council as a whole, at this stage, just because there isn't a lot of design that's known yet, when we're doing our costing, we're assuming a standard parking structure under standard construction techniques. Once we actually start, if we get approved, then we actually get into that more detailed design. We start working with our construction manager. We bring in the experts like from Kiwi Newton. Well, actually, the existing Bradford building at Miller Park was built by Kiwi Newton. So we do actually have a fairly long working relationship with them. And that's where we get into that value engineering, doing our tendering, getting the best prices and some of those other options and other technologies that are out there. The issue is at this stage and just trying to keep us an even baseline with what we do know. That is how we chose to cost it, but totally appreciate your comments and understand that if we can get into some of the precast and prefab type systems like Kiwi Newton does, not only does that get the cost down, but it actually helps us with our Ontario Works office, just with the speed of construction. That we'll be looking to a number of those types of technologies. Kiwi Newton isn't the only player in the game that's out there. There's a few of those, but that will be certainly getting their expertise and as well as the best price.
And yeah, General Manager.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. I would also just add, and I know Brad shared this in his presentation, the pricing and the forecasting of the cost of the development, including the garage, includes the 3 years of inflation. So we're pricing the cost as what it would cost us 3 years from now to complete the build. Secondarily, to just flagging to that the Rapid Housing Initiative, if there's another round and they announce in the fall, it would probably be setting approvals for starting for projects that are in the ground in July. So we have to be mindful of timing here. And you know, this is one consideration that we'd like to emphasize, that although we don't have something in front of us now, The longer we take to get into the ground, the more likely we might miss a very tight window that would qualify us for significant funding, especially at this unit count and size. And then the last thing to, again, flagging that while we have increased cost per unit, we're also increasing revenue in perpetuity. So there is that factor on the revenue side of the sheet that Brad had shared in his presentation that allows us to take a look. And again, and this is something I believe we've shared in the previous presentation as well. The standard of cost for building at excludes what many private developers includes what many private developers exclude, which is the 50-year capital. And in a layman's term, when a condo comes up, the developer isn't putting forward the responsibility of the next 50 years of capital maintenance and repair, and putting that on a condo board to raise the money through a condo fee. So this is us doing that in the upfront cost by putting in the development or the quality or the standard of development to allow it to have a life cycle that lasts the 50 years. I thought that was maybe an important consideration as well when we look at the unit cost. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Smith,
may,
you still
Mr.
have a
Chair?
follow-up? You have a follow-up?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess what I would say is I understand time is of the essence, and I certainly understand that in this market today that the longer we wait, the worse it gets. But I'm seeing a differential here of about 200%. If I'm looking just at the parking structure from 6 million to 18 million. These are significant dollars. And if I'm hearing correctly, we understand that there are companies like Kiwi Newton out there, and we've used them before, and we understand their costing. And so if they're saying it's about $6 million and we're saying it's $18 million, what does that mean for the rest of this build when we're talking a total of about 240 million? Are we way off by 200% there as well? And if so, how do you expect council to approve this today without a number that is more realistic? And again, I'm not degrading staff in any way, shape, and form, Mr. Chair. I have the utmost respect for our staff. I think they are second to none here at the county. There's no doubt in my mind, other than maybe Saga Beach, but they're second to none here at the county. But this is very concerning. What I'm hearing right now is that this company thinks they could do this looking at the plan for 6 million. We're saying we're planning 18 million because we're really not sure. And we've got a $240 million project. I really would like to see some more in-depth conversation and a more accurate, if you will, number come to council for approval. If the rest of this project is if this is any indicator, perhaps what the rest of this project may be like. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, and thank you for those comments. I know staff have added in the inflation, and like our GM had said, is about the 50-year renewal. So there is cost there that they're not seen by the developer. And I've seen many times where they've sent me emails and said, "Oh, I can do this project for way cheaper than what you're getting, you're costing right now." So, and then when it comes down to it, they tend to escalate the price. So I will turn it over to GM for a response to Councillor Smith's concerns again, if there's any.
No, thank you, Chair Leduc, and thank you for the comments, Councillor Smith. Again, I would say that the pricing and the forecasting is done at a very conservative level. That's why we included, 10 years of inflation, then another 8, and then another 8 on top of that, compounding the price. So certainly if inflation stays, I think we're in a conservative position. If it decreases, then we find ourselves coming back down to earth when it comes to some of the pricing on a few of these things. Secondly, in terms of the 200% difference, again, we can explore and have these discussions, but when we do the public call, we see all the proposals, and based on the criteria we are looking for, and then we land the lowest price. So by approving option 3 or 2 or 1 or 4, any of them, whatever council gives us authority for, we'd certainly come back and report back what the outcome of the call was, what the price point was agreed on, and what the bid would shares by each portion of the project. So that that's something we've committed to in our previous plans, and we continue to do that. And again, based on an annual budget cycle, we would share the increases or reductions that we've experienced to council each year at budget approval, as well through our capital plan. And then secondarily, I would say that, you know, we're certainly, like, as Director Spiewak shared, we're in communication with a lot of these developers and have done work with them in the past. So certainly we're not opposed ever to getting expertise on special parts of the project. Certainly the garage is a unique feature. So we will commit to continue to explore, you know, the best way to go about the parking garage. We are adding the offices on top of the garage as well. And I know that didn't considerably change the cost, but it considerably saved us costs from a double move of our largest Ontario Works office. And that would have really added, you know, to our overall operating costs as a division. So that is another, you know, value added in options 3 and 4, which, you know, council had directed us to look at better use of that space. So so we are seeing some efficiencies on the operating side as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got, okay, so I've got Councillor Norris next. I do have Mayor Nuttall and Councillor Snell. So I'll go to Councillor Norris first.
Thank Councillor Duke. Just a quick question for you, Brad. I'm just kind of curious, the different heights in the towers. Why 9 and 11? Why are they not the same? It's just an offbeat question here.
Yeah, through the chair. No, it's a very good question. And really the main reason is aesthetics, and they are large buildings in a relatively currently small neighborhood anyways, with mostly you know, single detached homes. So by staggering the towers a little bit, what that does, it just kind of breaks it up so that when people are looking, they're not seeing you know, this big wall of building or concrete. So again, it's mostly visual. You know, to try to, like I said, so you know, sometimes hear the term break up the massing, right? So that it just doesn't look as large.
Okay, Councillor Norris, great question. Thank you. Okay, I'm off to Mayor Nuttall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And no, I apologize for not being maybe in the right clothes here. I'm just getting ready for my charity game tomorrow night. Give myself a little plug there. Molson Center, Southern Arena at 7 p.m. But when I hear these things come to our council meetings and people come in and they say, well, you know, I know staff put a lot of good time and effort in, but somebody else can do it better or do it for less money or provide a better quote. My response to them is twofold. Number one, don't bring that to the council table, because the real work doesn't happen at council meetings. This is a bit of theater compared to the work that happens between meetings. Take it to staff, get the feedback, and work through it. Don't blindside folks at council meetings. Number two is that ask them to put it in paper. I'm sure that Mina, if you received, and Brad and team, if they received a $6 million quote on an $18 million budget, they'd sign it in 2.1 seconds, as long as it met all of the criteria that were required. So I think that these are kind of things that tend to lead us off track and take us down rabbit holes, cost time, cost money, when I know folks are really trying to save money. The other thing I think it's really important to note is that, you know, you've got rising cost base for the last number of years, and you know, we're looking at a few projects here locally, and we're saying, okay, we're going to double what we thought that they were going to cost. And the reason we're doubling is because it's not because we, you know, can actually budget it out to be twice as expensive, but because the last thing we want is to put our corporations that we are responsible for in a position where we haven't allocated enough funds, we haven't budgeted properly, and we have cost overruns and subsequent tax increases because it just moves to the operating line instead of being part of a capital build. And so I think that it is very important in a rising inflation environment that we do have you know, proper contingencies. 200% is a big number, but I'm sure that construction company can bid on the project and provide us that $6 million quote at the time when it goes out to market. And finally, just on the project as a whole, Simcoe County, Barrie, we're kind of a tale of two different places right now when it comes to working with the province on housing. At least that's what I read. The city of Barrie is, and this is a testament to those who come before me as well as the work that we've been doing, but we are cracking on when it comes to building housing. And when I look at the options for density height units, I think if we were to call the housing folks in Toronto or Minister Clark or the Premier and say we've got an opportunity to build X or to build Y on property, and the number of units is going to increase, even the overall spaces and the number of units is going to increase, I think I know what their answer would be in terms of going forward. So those are my comments, and certainly I'm open to any debate on better on better value for taxpayer money in terms of the delivery, but it needs to be in writing and it needs to be done between meetings, not at this one.
All right, thank you for those comments, Mayor Nuttall. I have Councillor Snell, and then I have Councillor Smith that wants to reply. But you know what, Councillor Smith, can I ask you to pull this when we go back into council, and you can come up with the comments again in council if you don't mind. We're trying to get through the meeting today, but if you don't mind pulling this, you can pull that when it comes up in the council meeting when we go back to review the minutes. That'd be okay?
That's fine with me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's more just a reply to Mayor Nuttall's comments. Thank you.
I assumed it was. Thank you. Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. I wanted to know specifically what the makeup of the units are. The report details in regards to the top two floors being mostly one bedrooms and studios, but can you break down maybe just specifically around option 3 that's being recommended? What are the makeup of the units and what are the square footage of the units, please? And then I have an additional question.
Director?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you for that question. So we have a mix of studios, 1 beds, 2 beds, and 3 beds. So it'd be that combination. I'll try to get the exact number here for you just while we're talking. And then when it comes to size, for us, studios are about 500 square feet. Our 1 beds are just over 600, about 640. And then our 2 bedrooms are about 900, about 950. And then our 3 bedrooms are 1,100. So again, it's pretty much like an entire house. We're a small house that we're putting into our 3-bedroom units. And a lot of that also stems from if you remember on the financials, the proceeds of sale, we are selling the 64 houses in Barrie, and a number of those most of those are 3 bedrooms. There's even a handful of 4 bedrooms, and I think even 1 or 2 5 bedrooms. So, and that's the other reason is the 3-bedroom units are a little bit larger.
So Jim, I'm sorry I went to the director, but I will go to you from now on, and then you could pass it to whoever you'd like in your staff. I'm sorry about that. So I will go to you first from now on. Okay, so I've got Councillor Snell, you're good with go ahead.
Just while I'm waiting on the specific makeup of those suites, compositions, if you don't get the uptake in terms of the at market or above market rent pieces, which you've allocated for the top 2 floors, one question I had was, what do you think the 1 beds or those studios might rent for at market? And if you don't get that buy-in, how does that impact the project financially?
So GM, I'll turn to you.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. Thank you, Councillor Snell, for the question. A couple of things. As the system service manager, this would just be one property within our larger portfolio. And this goes towards the conversation we were having earlier at the Simcoe County Housing Board earlier today. We're giving ourselves more flexibility to move RGI around, and we're also giving ourselves flexibility of moving more people who are maxed out on their RGI and paying what we define as market rent, which would be around that 80% or 100% of AMR. So what we would do is we'd approach those clients first and say to them, hey, you're paying exactly what we're looking for at this property at Rose Street. Would you be willing to take on this affordable housing unit, new one in downtown Barrie, in exchange for going on to this program or this subsidized rent program? And we would free up that RGI and put it back into the portfolio and take someone off the wait list for the deeper subsidy. So just having that flexibility of being able to actually approach clients who we already know are paying that level of rent, we don't foresee us having any challenges in being able to fill the units, the market rent ones or the above average market rent at 120% AMR, because we have tenants right now in the RGI program paying those levels.
Councillor Smell, you're fine now?
Yes, thank you for that answer. And when the director has the information in regards to the breakdown, I look forward to hearing that. Thank you.
Do we have the breakdown available right now?
Yes, we do, Chair. So we have 47 3-bedrooms, 32 2-bedrooms, and 97 a combination of 1-bedrooms and studios. There's just a small handful of studios on those upper floors. And I think the other question had to do with the actual rent charge. So if we use today's dollars for rent, and I only grabbed 1-bedroom because you can imagine a huge set of numbers, but if we just use 1-bedroom to keep it simple as a bit of a baseline, so at 100 AMR, that's $1,278 in Barrie right now. And at 120 AMR, it's just under 1,500. And certainly those units in that location in Barrie, now true market, like I said, would be much closer to 2,000, or in a new building, perhaps even a little over 2,000.
Okay, thank you for that information. I will move on to Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to share my feelings with it. I think from what I understand from what everybody's saying, that there isn't a large appetite for option 4. If we were looking at option 4, there's such a huge amount of difference in the cost. I'd want to see us get a little more accurate, but I'm personally quite comfortable deciding today on option 3 to move forward and looking forward to those savings through the tendering process, and so that we don't delay this anymore.
Okay, thank you. And I think I've got through everybody that wanted to comment on this. I appreciate everybody jumping in and getting your comments in. If I'm missing anybody, please put your hand up. Otherwise, I will ask for a mover and a seconder as the motion is written. So a move by Councillor Bell. Can I have you move it? Option 3. Councillor Bell, can you want to move, but you just shake your hand? Yeah, okay. And can I have somebody else? Councillor Norris, thank you. So can I, the recommendation is that the item CCW 2023-194 dated August 8th, 2023 regarding Simcoe Housing Corporation, Development 20 Rose Street, additional units option be received, and that staff proceed with option 3 as generally outlined in CCW 2023-194, 250 residential units, mixed income, mixed use development, and that Simcoe County Housing Corporation development project at 20 Rose Street, updated estimated cost of the construction be approved to proceed as substantially outlined in item CCW 2023-194, and that the signing officers for the Simcoe County Housing Corporation execute all required applications, agreements, and documents. May I have all in favor, please? Okay. And opposed? Any opposed out there?
I don't see any.
Okay, seeing none, we're carried. Thank you. We are back into Human Services, other matters for consideration. 22, Human Services, other matters for consideration. So is there other matters for consideration under Human Services? We got their hand up. Seeing none, I don't see any, your warden, so I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. And now we'll go to Corporate Services with Chair Dolan.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. So we're on item 23. 23.1 is the updated Simcoe County Forest 20-year management plan. Questions or comments on this item? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, I'm sorry, Councillor Follis. We're in Corporate Services now, so Aurelia and Barrie aren't party to that.
Thanks for the clarification.
No worries, no worries. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm just going to ask one, if I could, Jim Elliott, through you to Mr. Davis, around the oak wilt and any new information on Oak Wilt and where we are with it?
Yes, thank you, Chair Dolan. I will pass that right along to our Forester, Graham Davis.
Good morning, Council, and thanks for the question, Chair Dolan. I think in short, I don't have a lot to add. I can tell you that we are continuing to engage with the federal, it's the Canadian Food Inspection Agency that is the lead on this file. Our main role at the county will be around disposal. That's with regard to the initial infection site that's been located in Springwater. Springwater Township is working cooperatively as well and will be on the tree removal. At this point in time, the good news is there's been no additional sites that have been located to date, but there is more information coming into the CFIA and we'll continue to monitor that. I will have certainly some information coming back to council on how we will look to try to mitigate the impacts of Oak Wilt into the future. I can say, at least at this point in time, the intent of the CFIA is eradication. So we're certainly still hopeful that if everything works well and we all play our roles appropriately, that we will keep the impacts modest, at least in the reasonable short term. But there will be more to come on Oak Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, and thanks again for all of the work in this updated management plan. And any other questions, comments, or amendments? Seeing none, flipping. So I ask for a mover and a seconder, please, for the recommendation, which is that the updated 20-year management plan for Simcoe County Forest, substantively in the form attached to Schedule 1 to item CCW 2023-187 dated August the 8th be approved. Mover, please. Councillor Anderson, seconder, Councillor Cox. All those in favor? That is carried. Next is item number 24.1, and that is the notice of appeal for the Town of Bradford West Gwillimbury official plan. Questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, ask for a mover and a seconder, please, for the recommendation moved by Councillor Leduc and seconded by Councillor Sandu, that item CCW 2023-199 dated August the 8th, 2023 regarding appeals to the Ontario Land Tribunal regarding the Town of Bradford West Gwillimbury official plan be received, and the staff and legal counsel attend all necessary meetings, complete all required filings, and attend all proceedings regarding the appeal to the Town of Bradford West Gwillimbury official plan approval, and that the County Director of Planning and Chief Planner and or the county solicitors sign any minutes of settlement on behalf of the County of Simcoe if required, where such settlement maintains the intent of the applicable provincial, county, and township policies, bylaws, and standards. All those in favor? Any contrary? Seeing none, that is carried, and I will pass it to Councillor Measures as I have declared pecuniary interest on item 25.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Council, we're at item number 25. It's other matters for consideration. There is a letter dated June 26, 2023 from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority regarding the Township of Springwater Assessment Report Amendment under Section 34 of the Clean Water Act. I understand that Sarah Thompson is available from the NVCA if there are any questions. Members of Council, are there any questions to this motion? I don't see any. This fun with the old Zoom thing. Okay, then I'll tell you what, I do have the recommendation in front of me, so I'll look for a mover and seconder, and that would be Councillor Fryer and alternate Councillor Kathy Jeffrey. Thank you very much. That the correspondence dated June 26, 2023 from Sarah Thompson, Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, and Bill Thompson, Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, regarding amendments to the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Plan, notification of consultation pursuant to Section 34-2 and 34-3 of the Clean Water Act 2006, Ontario Regulation 287-07, and be received. and that the county council endorse the proposed amendments to the Township of Springwater chapter of the Nottawasaga Valley Assessment Report, as well as the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Plan outlined in the amendments to the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Plan, notification of consultation pursuant to section 34-2 and 34-3 of the Clean Water Act 2006 and Ontario Regulation 287-07 per the correspondence dated June 26, 2023, and that the NVCA and the LSRCA be notified of the County Council's decision. All right. Seeing nothing further, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Are there opposed? Oh, we'll consider that carried. At this time, I'll turn it back to the warden. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. Hey, I finally got my cards. So with that, I will go on to performance management and Councillor Cox, Chair Cox, sorry about that.
Thank you very much. Number 26, performance management consent. Recommendation that the following consent item having been given due consideration be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Snell, second by Councillor Locke. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Now we'll move on to performance management finance 2023 strategic initiatives. Director Wilcox, did you want to speak to this before I get a mover and a second, or do you want me just to do that and then if you want to speak to it or answer any questions?
At whatever time you want, Chair, I'm happy to speak to it.
Okay, go ahead. If there are, I can do questions first, or you can speak to it first if you'd like.
Okay, I'll just give a brief introduction.
Okay, thank you.
This is following our multiple sessions, our 2 sessions on strategic planning. There's a few attachments in there. Schedule 1 was the items that we've previously reviewed during those sessions, and through those sessions were the ones that were approved as strategic initiatives. In the final session, there was a number of items that were discussed. The raw notes from those and themes that came out are in Schedule 3, but in Schedule 2, what we boiled them down to is what we're calling primary and secondary initiatives. The primary initiatives were the initiatives that pretty well every group identified as desirable in terms of an initiative that we wanted to move forward with. So you'll see that there are 3 of those outlined in the report. Staff is recommending that we add those to the strategic initiatives that we consider moving forward with. And then there were also a few 3 secondary items that were 1 or 2 groups brought forward, but was not really consensus. So we listed those as secondary initiatives. We have not put those in as a primary initiative, so we are not recommending that we add those at this time. So we're with the direction of council, though, you're welcome to add or delete whichever ones you want, primary, secondary, etc. We're at your we're wondering for your direction. I would remind council that we do this on an annual basis, so we always do review our strategic initiatives on an annual basis and can always adjust those as well. So, you know, it's not like we're locked in forever on these. Thank you very much, Chair. That's I can answer any other questions as we go along.
I think I'll get a mover and a seconder, please, to put this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Brian Smith, seconded by Councillor Measures, that item CCW 2023-205 dated August 8th, 2023 regarding the County of Simcoe's 2023 strategic initiatives substantively in the form attached as Schedule 1 to item CCW 2023-205 be approved, and the council consider the primary and secondary initiatives attached as Schedule 2 and provide direction. Any questions or concerns? Councillor Leduc.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm good with all of the suggestions, especially the secondary and primary ones. The key was that I thought we missed, and I think we missed one very important one, is the waste management, where we're into, you know, we're not crisis quite yet, but we're getting near crisis. And I wondered if we should add that as a secondary supplement to start to look at how we're going to deal with this waste management moving forward. I mean, we've got to come up with some kind of solution. We've got to start looking at it. I know we've got some reports coming. I just wondered if it should have been in our strategic priorities thing. So I maybe turn to Trevor and find out if it needs to be in here or if there's already a goal set forward to get that done.
Director Wilcox?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, thank you for that question. Yes, there are a number of initiatives definitely within waste management. We do have the waste management strategy by itself that's going forward. What we've pulled into the initiatives at this time are the ones that are immediately being looked at, and you'll see in the list on Schedule 1 that there are a number of initiatives in there from a waste management perspective. That doesn't preclude us from other initiatives and review of other strategies. I think, maybe I'm not speaking to this well, and GM Elliott could probably add some color to this as well. Thank you.
GM Elliott?
Thank you, if I may, Chair. Absolutely. Council might recall that staff did bring forward we called it a strategic plan with 15 pathways around waste management issues moving forward. We also intend to make waste capacity a primary issue in our delegation to the MECP at AMO in the coming weeks ahead. It's certainly not lost upon us. Coming right out and looking for new landfill capacity within the counties certainly been a challenge in the past. So we're looking at other options, including diversion, organics processing, all those types of things. But we are going to bring each of those 15 pathways forward with each of their strategy for council's consideration in weeks and months ahead.
Councillor Duke?
No, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we're looking at that. Great, thanks.
Thank you, and it's good to hear that we could see somebody at AMO with the waste capacity issue. Any other questions or comments? Warden, are there any I may not see? No?
No, I'm not seeing any.
Okay, then all in favor? Thank you. And other matters for consideration, I have none. Back to you, Warden.
Thank you. Next is in camera. So is there anybody that feels the need to go into camera to discuss the items? There are some new ones on there. I'll look for a card. If not, we'll just read the recommendations. Councillor Cox?
I wasn't sure if we needed to for the one to give approval, or would that be covered?
It would be covered, I believe, would it not? It would be covered.
Okay, thank you very much.
I did see Councillor Leduc, I think, had a card.
Yeah, Warden, I was just going to ask for a little bit of further explanation on item number 4, because it is something related.
Right.
So I just wonder if we could, I don't want to take up too much time, but I think it deserves a little comment.
We go into camera for that? Okay, then we will go into camera. So I look for a mover, moved by Councillor Leduc, second by, oh boy, Councillor Locks, that the committee of the whole resolve into closed session at 10:55 under the Authority of the Municipal Act, Section 239 2C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by a municipality or local board. All in favor? That is carried. So just give us a few minutes here to get set up. So, yeah, I might as well scan through all of them then.